What is the IT strategy for the International Trade Administration, ITA? How is ITA modernizing and securing its technology infrastructure? And what does the future hold for IT at the International Trade Administration? We'll explore these questions and so much more with my very special guest, Gerald Caron, Chief Information Officer at the International Trade Administration within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Jerry, I was hoping you could tell us more about your specific role. What are your duties and responsibilities as the Chief Information Officer at ITA? How is your office organized, and how do you support the overall mission of the agency?
Yes. So as the Chief Information Officer for ITA, we are a bureau within the Department of Commerce. But my primary role is all aspects of IT for the International Trade Administration. That includes support, modernization, cybersecurity, and all the things that go along with managing an IT infrastructure and an IT organization. Primarily, of course, ITA, we just went over the mission and the business units. ITA's main function is not IT. IT is an enabler. So it is important that when we talk about those missions, that I provide solutions that align with helping them accomplish their mission. So we have a program which we call the Lean Agile Management Program, where we do product management and we do partnerships with each of our business units and their representatives to ensure that the IT work that we are doing is a value add to them that helps with their mission and advance their mission, and give them the best solutions possible. So it's a very close partnership we have. It's not. I like to equate it to, I've been to places before where you see the tennis match where somebody says they need something, hit it over the net to the IT folks, and the IT folks mess around with it for a little while and provide something and hit it back, and then it comes back and says, no, that's not what I wanted. It is a very close partnership from conceptual thought of needing something, understanding what the business need is, understanding what the criteria is, what those requirements are, working through that representative for the business unit to get that interpretation, then working directly with us as we go through the solutioning and making a decision and a formal acceptance of what we are providing. So we're more likely to provide the first time something that is a value add rather than playing the tennis match, which you can see in some organizations and that I've experienced before.
You know, as we look inward, Jerry, I was wondering if you could tell us about your IT strategy and maybe highlight some of your key strategic priorities for IT within the International Trade Administration.
Yeah. So when it comes to strategic priorities, of course, internally, being selfish, my employees, the people within the OC, the Office of the Chief Information Officer, they're my most important resource. We're not huge. So what can we give them to, better and further themselves, make sure that they have everything they need to do their job. So looking out for our people first and foremost and ways to do that. Of course, as the IT shop or the CIO's office here, of course, we want to stay up to date on things. So modernize, take advantage of technologies as best we can that have a value add to the organization. So what are ways to do that? How do we get that input to make sure that we are providing a value add? Be safe and secure. Ways to do that. We want to be able to be sustainable. We've dealt with some legacy applications that is taken before I got here, they were working on modernizing, and they were built in such a way that, they either weren't sustainable or it wasn't something easily that we could modularly move. So how can we make sure that we don't engineer ourselves in a corner, that we can sustain and take on what we want for a longer term is very important. And while we're making sure that's the value add. And also cybersecurity is a big soapbox item of mine, making sure that things are secure. And that's on behalf of our users, whether they be internal, external, and making sure, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability are there only for the right information to the right people at the right time are very important key things. So I would say those are probably my key strategic priorities at a high level.
That's terrific. And another approach I want to talk about as a good follow-up to that is more about your IT modernization journey. And where I'm going with this is, what are you doing around phasing out maybe legacy technologies, transitioning to a cloud-based solution? And what is ITA's approach to using cloud and embracing the cloud technology that can make it more flexible, streamline operations for an organization the size of ITA?
Yeah, so I'm happy to say we're 100% cloud. We don't have any on-premises or data centers, so to speak, at all. We everything is in the cloud for us, so that's a great thing. I inherited that, so I was very thankful when I arrived and heard that. It's like, oh, hallelujah! Because the great thing about the cloud is the technology is always changing. I don't have to do the logistics of racking and stacking thing, figuring out, all that, buying equipment and hardware and everything. We can spin things up, create what we need in the cloud when we need. So there's some great flexibility. And the cloud is always modernizing itself. The tools and some of the capabilities in these clouds is always being modernized. So we're able to take advantage of those sooner rather than later. The time to value is greater as well because I'm not doing all that upfront logistics of racking and stacking and procuring hardware and things and figuring out where it's going to go. It's like, okay, we can spin this up, get the thing going for the what's needed for, and then so we get quicker time to value and quicker time to deployment. So that's some great things about the cloud. And the monitoring and being a global organization, it's accessible anywhere. And not having to do that inefficient routing of having to hone back and rely on an on-premises network just to go back out to the internet is a great thing. Now, there are some cons, of course. You have to probably be able to monitor the cloud and understand what's going on in the cloud, take advantage of the tools that are being provided, understand because yes, the vendor is responsible for certain aspects of managing the cloud that you're residing in, but it's still your data. So it's still your responsibility to make sure your data is protected. So you need to take advantage of those tools and be able to properly monitor the environment and understanding the costs. I think as people move to the cloud, understanding what the true costs of the cloud are. You might not realize it initially, but over time, if you properly manage it, like if you're not using compute, spin it down. Understand what your storage needs are. Understand what your egress, when you're taking data out of the cloud, what those costs are. Really understanding that. It's a new concept where it's like I'm not buying like a box with a limited amount of storage. It's understanding, those services. It's more like paying the water bill or the electricity bill. As you're using electricity, the bill goes up. Understanding how to manage that properly, I think, is very important.
Everybody hears about it, but do folks really know what it means? And I'm getting at zero trust. What is zero trust? And perhaps you could describe for us, maybe in some detail, if you will, why is it so critically important in defending government technology assets?
I love to talk about zero trust. So if we are talking about starting at the basics, zero trust 101. So zero trust 101, formerly we did probably what is the castle moat. And we always talked about defense in depth, right? And, you have the castle moat, you have the castle walls, then you got rooms in the castle with doors and things like that. Okay, that's defense in depth. You have the hard, and I like to call it the Tootsie Roll Pop security, right? The hard outer shell with the soft gooey center. Once I get over the walls and over the moat and the walls, I can kind of roam around the castle. Yes, some doors may be locked, but a window might be open. Things like that. So there's the castle moat approach or the Tootsie Roll Pop approach. Because the soft gooey center, we know it only took Mr. Owl 3 licks to get to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop. So you gotta have the mindset of you're soon breached, that you are breached, that you will be breached. With zero trust, it's a lot different in that I think why it's important. It's an effective strategy towards doing cybersecurity, protecting what's most important, understanding what's most important, and putting your protections closer to those things so that when a breach does happen, that the impact of that breach is contained so that an adversary doesn't get in the castle and start moving laterally freely to elevate themselves to those things. So I like to say, okay, my bologna sandwich got stolen. Okay, I'm a little concerned because I was hungry, but there's plenty of bologna and bread in the world. But the first thing I'm going to do is like, oh my God, my bologna sandwich got stolen. Are my crown jewels safe? Because I cannot lose those. I cannot afford to lose the crown jewels. There's only they're one of a kind. I lost those, it's done. So the analogy I like to use, or the description, is if you think of going to the movies. We have these multiplex movie theaters. I buy a ticket online. I show up at the movie. They scan my phone. Where do they scan your phone? They scan your phone in the lobby, right? And then you're into the movie theater. I have access to the restrooms, the popcorn, all of those things, in the lobby and things like that. But a lot of the movie theaters I go to, I could stay there all day if I really wanted, because nobody's at the door checking your ticket. They already scanned you at the lobby. After I'm in the movie, I can go into any movie. I get done watching one, I could go to another. Yes, there's reserved seats, but they're not always full. So I could sit there and watch movies all day if I wanted to, and movie hop. Nobody's going to check. Nobody knows. That's kind of the former way of doing the castle moat security. With zero trust, what changes is, yes, I'm going to get my ticket scanned when I walk into the lobby. I have access to those things that everybody that's allowed into the movie theater has access to, the concessions, the restrooms, things like that. But now when I go to my movie that I bought the ticket for, there's going to be somebody at the door checking me and making sure that I'm allowed into that theater. And then once I am in that theater, there's going to be somebody coming and constantly checking all the factors that everything's okay. Everybody's in the right seat. The movie's working. The projector, the lights are down. All of those things are working, and constantly checking those factors. So if that something happens, an action is taken. The projector broke. An action needs to be taken. The lights are on. The lights have to be off. Somebody's got to take an action. So it's a constant check at that. Now, if in a zero trust as well, I show up to the movies. I had a ticket to see the regular viewing of a movie, but I see when I get inside the movie, it's like, oh my God, it's in the IMAX version, and it's only like 5 minutes later than the movie I bought the ticket for. And I show up and I try to walk into the IMAX theater instead of the one I bought the ticket for. The person at the door is going to say, no, you're not allowed in here. This would be an upgrade. Please go back, upgrade your ticket, and then you can come in. But other than that, you have to go to the movie that you bought the ticket for. So I can go back, upgrade my ticket, like a step-up authentication, and then I can go into the IMAX one. Now, when we're talking about the movie's the data. And the data is what we're trying to protect at the end of the day. And I think one thing I hear a lot is a lot of people say it's all about identity. Zero trust is all about identity. No, identity is one of the 5 pillars of zero trust. No one pillar should be more important to the other in my eyes. Identity is very important in zero trust, but all the pillars need to work together. It's an architecture. It's an integration between those pillars, that everything flows through those pillars. It's no one pillar on its own. But at the end of the day, why I say it's important, the data, is that's what I'm trying to protect, because that's digitally what we're producing. And when somebody says it's all about identity, well, if you were the cybersecurity analyst and I got breached, probably your first 2 questions, or at least 2 of your questions, are going to be, what did I have access to? And is there exfil? Are we losing data? That is no longer really about my identity, but that's focusing on the data aspects of what happened. And all data is not created equal. So if I have the crown jewels, I want to put my protections as close around those crown jewels as possible, so that if my bologna sandwich gets stolen, they're not elevating to that. So I want to reduce or mitigate that impact of that breach, because it will happen. You have to have that assumption that a breach is going to happen, because a breach is not always a malicious actor either, which a lot of people, when they talk about these things, a breach can happen from a person within your organization just trying to get their job done. And they unknowingly find ways around all this great security that you put in place, because they're going to find a one way or another get their job done. They have deadlines and things. They're not doing it such in a malicious fashion. They're just getting the job done. God bless them. So, understanding that, it's like, I don't care if you're an insider or an outsider in zero trust. I'm not going to trust anybody until I do a proper level of checks. And I'm going to take every piece of data that I can to make assessment in a constant real-time fashion. All the telemetry I can get to make decisions on, am I sure about this or not? So there's a methodology around what I like to call confidence scoring or risk scoring, that, okay, you come to the door, here's the factors that I'm going to check. What kind of device? Am I managing the device? There's different levels of risk of how somebody authenticates, a PIV card versus a username password. There's different levels of risk. Are you coming from a known network that I'm managing, that I have telemetry, or are you coming from the coffee shop down the street? Different levels of risk. Are you coming from a fully managed device or a personal device? Different levels of risk. That all adds up to some kind of score if you put a scoring methodology over it. And now if I breach some kind of threshold, if I know what my risk thresholds are for the data target that you're requesting access, I can make a decision on that. Now, let's say that, all right, you didn't breach the threshold. I let you do what you need to do and access the data that you need to do. Then what happens is I'm going to constantly check other factors as well in as real time as possible, because we don't want to do this in a linear fashion. Things can change. Your behavior can start changing all of a sudden. I may have different tools that say, oh, we let you in, but after doing some more checks, there's a little concern here. Let's downgrade you, or let's bring you into some kind of remediation, like apply to connect kind of thing. So we want to constantly check, because factors can change. The environments are always changing. So we got to be constantly watching and bringing all that data together. So to get to that utopia, I think machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to be very important, because there's so much data to take in and make sense of it. A human's not going to be able to do that in as real time as possible. The machine learning aspect, do you really know what your environment is, what the baseline is, what normal looks like? A lot of people won't know what normal looks like. So you really need to understand what normal looks like, so that when abnormal happens, boom, you can take an action by monitoring that telemetry.
Jerry, turning to the future, what do you want to achieve in the next year or so?
Well, I'm too young for retirement still. I think in the next year, I wanna, a lot of this past year, I've been here a year. It was a year in February. Was a lot of learning experience. A lot of tweaks, understanding, making the relationships, improving the relationships, and things like that. I want to take it to the next level. I want to offer more ideas to the organization of the art of the possible, where they could really be going. God love the customers that we serve. They have some great ideas. I want to be able to take those and run with them, but I want to make sure that they understand, what possibilities there are. They may think there's only one way to do things. Want to offer them options in order to do that, and take the organization to the next level through the enablement of IT. I think the organization wants to do that as well. And how can we best go about doing that? Yes, we have constraints. We know, we've had some tight years recently, but where's the value add, and really step up to the next level. Now that, after a year, you got my feet under me and stuff. We got a great team that's capable of doing a lot of things. We're built some and further, I think, our partnerships. We have a great program, I think, in order to manage it. And so it's like, let's take it to the next level now. We can do more, I'm sure. But we have to do that in partnership with our organization. And I think, the confidence has grown in some of the things that we've done too, that I think, we'll see some opportunities to move even further into the future. And then hopefully I'll be able to retire at some point, but that's a little far off, not the next year.
Speaking about being far off, I'm just thinking about the next cadre of folks who come in and do the wonderful work you've been leading. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about a career in public service?
A career in public service, I would say it is very rewarding. You're making a difference for your country. You're working for your country at the end of the day. We're all taxpayers. We're doing things on behalf of our taxpayers. Now, some people will say, "Oh, federal government." I know there's some negative kind of things and said about the federal government and stuff, but really and truly, when you look at the people that are, doing the work here within the organization, especially within ITA, talk about how passionate they are. Everybody's trying to do the right thing, and doing that on behalf of the American taxpayer is really, and the most patriotic thing you can think of. You're really giving back to your country and doing public service. So for that, it's very rewarding when you think about it and sit back and look at it. It's like, man, I'm doing good things for my country. I hope I am, but I know there's others that are really doing good things for the country. But it is rewarding in that sense. So I would say, it's a rewarding way to think of it when you look at it that way, and contribute to the success and further this country. Any little thing. It's like everybody talks about the story about the janitor in NASA. They ask him, "So what's your mission?" His mission, yeah, he's mopping floors, but he's helping, by him doing his job, he's helping put rockets on the moon, kind of thing, or into space, because somebody else doesn't have to do his job. That's real. Everybody has a contribution in some, no matter how big or small, in furthering the U.S. government in what they do. So it's very rewarding, and it's a privilege and an honor to do it.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Gerald Caron, Chief Information Officer at the International Trade Administration within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at iTunes, Spotify, Audible, or on your favorite podcast app. And as always, at businessofgovernment.org.